Go get real.
What is this guy doing? Let me through!
You're listening to Tonebender's Sound Design Podcast, presented by Sound Ideas. This is the show where we talk with the sonic artists behind our favorite films, games, and series. As the new year begins, Sound Ideas is offering its largest sale to date. For a limited time, receive 55% off professionally recorded sound effects and music libraries. This New Year promotion applies across their esteemed catalog, making it an ideal moment to expand or update your professional collection with authentic audio and a proven standard of quality. The Sound Ideas New Year's sale is available now for a limited time, so go visit sound-ideas.com right away. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this episode. This is a really special one as it took a lot of effort and time to pull this all together. This interview was recorded in front of a packed house at the Glen Film Center in Hollywood, California. We all watched F1 the movie together in this amazing sounding room. The room is huge, it has a massive mixing desk because it's a busy mix room with recent projects like Predator Badlands and Stranger Things that were final mixed in this very space. It also has cinema seating for over 100, so we were able to watch this incredible sounding film in the best environment possible. Then I got to talk to Gwen Yates-Whittle, Al Nelson, Gareth John, and Gary Rizzo up on stage in front of everyone in the house. A quick note, about 6 minutes in, we decided to change from lavs to handheld mics, so you'll notice a sudden change in the sound quality a few minutes in. It will stay consistent from that point on. A fun little fact, at the end we had a couple questions from the audience, and the first person to come up and ask was actually Oscar-nominated and Emmy-winning sound person Will Files. It was pretty cool to have him out for the event in the audience. Okay, let's get to the interview. Imagine you've just watched F1 the movie in an incredible sounding room, and now you're going to settle in to hear from the people behind the sound of the film. Here we go. So we're going to bring up to the stage now the sound team from F1. First up, we have Gwen Whittle, supervising sound editor. Gareth John, production sound mixer. Gary Rizzo, re-recording mixer. And Al Nelson, supervising sound editor. I wanted to say, first of all, that movie sounds fantastic. I got to go see it on opening night when it came out back in the spring. The crowd went nuts for it. It was really awesome. That's one of my favorite things about movies is when you get to see it in a communal experience and everybody's into it. And one of the things that I love about this movie is obviously there are a lot of races in it, but each race kind of has its own vibe to it. There's one race that has almost no play-by-play. There's another race that has like Led Zeppelin going through it. There's another race, the first race, I think, in the F1 with no music, which is a bold choice. Like that, to pull that off is intimidating, I would think. Maybe, Al, do you want to start with that, tackling a race where you know there's going to be, or did you know there was going to be no music?
We did, and intimidating is a good word, yeah. But also very exciting, and we're grateful to our filmmakers for trusting us to be able to support that scene, and it's a long scene. Silverstone is kind of the mecca of F1. It is where F1 racing began, and they really wanted to just highlight this is what it's like to be at a Grand Prix, at an F1 Grand Prix. And this is the elbows out, bare knuckles, 200 miles an hour down the straight, the two last place team members fighting it out. Early on, our picture editor, we're very clear that we are going to carve this race out specifically to be sound design, exciting, and it has to feel like you were really there at a Grand Prix, and you want to to put that experience on the screen, there's nothing to support it. There's no music, there's nothing to lean into. And Lewis Hamilton is going to review every turn and every move. Yeah, you're correct. Every race was different and everybody had their contributions to those experiences.
But Joe definitely planned it that way so that it wasn't just constant boom, 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 boom. So there was definitely a progression, and you have a different feel for each one, which makes the movie much more interesting.
And for what it's worth, previous to that scene, there is a lot of music. You know, we do start with Led Zeppelin. We do on Sonny's Lap. There's a source key that plays through that. We've got the title sequence with that Hans Zimmer theme. So it kind of was a nice relief because there's no music there, but also got you really familiar with the intensity of those vehicles. Those cars are no joke. Those cars are intense, and that's really the introduction to the audience of how monstrous these machines actually are.
And that was the first scene, the first time they shot F1, and Gareth was there on day one, and they had one take.
Yeah, Silverstone was, a brief little short window to get all those scenes. We didn't have long to shoot that at all.
On set, were you miking up the cars as well as the people?
Yeah, we'd mic up the cars. They were F2 cars, so we were kind of recording those as a guide track. But yeah, we put mics wherever we could, really. We had the Bolero headsets that our pit crew wore, and we put a DPA mic on the side as well to give Gwen some other options. So it wasn't just pure Bolero sound, but you could then cut to something a bit more natural. So yeah, they helped us a lot, the Bolero headsets.
Is a boom of any use on a racetrack like that?
When there's no cars going around, yes. So yeah, we boomed everything we could, but as soon as the cars go around the track, it was basically game over.
Amazing. So let's talk about one of the other races that has a very different feel, which is the Vegas race, which is all of a sudden kind of this entirely internal race. The sound effects take a bit of a step back. Instead of a rock and music track, there's this really bass-heavy score. Gary, do you want to talk about tackling that scene?
Yeah, we worked on that one right up to the bitter end, really. That's one of the most complicated emotional moments in the film. You know, you're inside Sonny's head, really frustrated, and we had to try and sell that emotion through sound, through rate, combining sound effects and music, as well as the crew communications with them. Yeah, uniquely for that race, uniquely for that moment inside Sonny's head. And we hadn't done anything like that at that point in the race. We really wanted to keep it muted and really unroll it as the scene comes to a climax, you've seen the movie, there's no spoilers now, as that wreck happens, and keep everything really under that filter, under that blanket until, he scrapes along that wall and you hear that fence, and it was unique and it worked. And it took some time to figure out really what the right scale of that was. If anybody here has been on a mix stage, we tinker with the delicate balance of those things in that moment to get it to play just right. And, we worked on that right up to the end.
Al, Gwen, how did you source the car sounds for this?
They're 20. They're always at the same place, and they don't want us to go anywhere near them. Thankfully, Joe brings us on very early. Thankfully, also, we got to start communicating with Gareth and his team very early. So there was a combination of doing some of our own research, reaching out to Gareth and saying, you're there. Can you start researching getting a rig on a car? Which F1 has some DPAs on each of the cars, but it's all broadcast quality. There's no onboard recorder. It just gets sent up to the cloud and then down to F1 headquarters. So by the time you get it, it's diminished in its quality, and we wanted cinematic quality. So it was first a quest for great onboard recording. And then from there, it was a quest for, there are 4 engines. They're 10 teams, 11 teams if you include our team, which is a Mercedes engine, but there's Mercedes engines, Ferrari engines, Honda engines, and then there's the Alpine, which is a Renault engine, I think. And so we wanted to make sure we had accurate engines for each of the teams, including our own. And it was just a quest for right engines, right speeds, right turns. Again, Lewis is reviewing everything. Thanks to Joe and Jerry and Apple, they started sending us out. Gwen and I got to go to Las Vegas. So I recorded Cars, Silverstone, Las Vegas, went to Abu Dhabi twice, went to Daytona. And then Gareth was grateful enough to also have his team help record some stuff. And we ended up with hundreds of tracks. And then not only are there cars, but there are crowds and other experiences.
Do you want to talk about capturing the crowds?
Gareth, he and his team did just a fabulous job. The fact that we could use any of the production at all still blows my mind, because those racetracks, there's music, there's other announcers going the whole time, there's crazy crowds there, but they're not clean. But the fact that we could get any of the principal dialogue to be usable was just incredible. And then he also got just sort of wild swaths of crowd reactions. Like, I think there was one point, Gareth, where there was a practice race, somebody crashed. Got a really great crowd reaction from that, which we were able to use. I sweetened it with sort of specifics from Loop Group. We used the Skywalker Loop Group for the Apex chants, which was pretty fun to record that. But it was all based on the production stuff that Gareth and that you picked up when you were there out there too.
So, I mean, we had our own mics dotted around, but also we had access to all of the Formula One mics, all the broadcast mics. So they might have 120 mics around the track, some stereo mics, some mono shotguns, some 5.1 surround mics dotted up and down the sort of the grid on all the various corners. And then we would set up two PICs 64 track recorders and record 128 different tracks of each racetrack, and then hand that off to these guys to sift through.
Terabytes of material. We had, I'm going to give a shout out to our sound design assistant, Andre Lynn. Andre, God bless her. We would get video of a race event. It could be a practice. It could be a Grand Prix. We'd get video that showed the dots of where each of the 20 drivers were of the actual Grand Prix. Then we could also reach out to F1 and we could get the helmet cams or the front car cams of any car, and we could get the onboard for that. Then we could sync that up. We would sync that up with the 120 tracks that we got from these recordings from each turn and each straight, each pit around the track. And then we could say, okay, I need turn 6 at Japan, and I need a Mercedes taking a downshift at turn 6. And you'd watch and you'd go, okay, there goes a McLaren, that's a Mercedes. There goes a Mercedes, that's a Mercedes. And then we could map that then to our shot. So it was complex, and Andre kept it all in her head. It was brilliant.
So that's how you made it so that the different cars had their own sounds, as you associated them with the kind of engine that it was.
That's just one aspect. It's each sound, also each turn, each straight, each event, each pit stop, each entry into the pit stop. The car is doing a particular thing at a particular gear at a particular speed. And so you need that first. And then you also need to say, oh, that's a Honda engine. That's a Red Bull. Because as you see in the movie, you see Max Verstappen do his thing. You can't put a Mercedes there, because at some point Lewis Hamilton's going to go, that's not a Red Bull, or you need a Ferrari here. So that's, it was all a bit of math.
One thing that was really great to have Lewis Hamilton there, because they did a playback of just sort of a rough pass of Silverstone, and they had him come in and listen to it and how it went down. And he said, well, that's really great, but that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. And I know you're in third gear, and that's right, I'm in third gear there. But I can tell you have it from a third gear from a different race, because I can hear the pit wall. And I was like, fuck.
And then but Lewis he's just such a gentleman. He says, okay, are you going to go to Mexico? Come to Mexico. I was like, well, no, I won't be in Mexico. He says, where are you going to be? In Las Vegas. Okay, come to Las Vegas. I'm going to get on the grid. I'm going to wait for all the other cars to go away. And then I'm going to do a grid start and away without any other cars. So he was literally, while he's trying to win Formula One racing, he's helping us get the sounds we need for our film. He would invite us into the garage so that we could be there when he starts it up. He was integral to our success.
That's amazing. I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about a conundrum that I think you masterfully overcame, is that there are races where we're hearing play-by-play and we're also hearing comms, I guess was the right word. So there's long stretches where there's no lip sync, but the audience has to understand where these voices are coming from. So you obviously have to treat them differently. And it felt like the play-by-play filled the entire room. Do you want to talk about how you tackled that problem of distinguishing where the voices were coming from?
I'm glad to hear that it worked. I'm glad to hear that it kind of filled that space. That was the idea. Not being a Formula One fan previous to working on this film, I did try to do some homework and watch some races to get the feel and the vibe. And first of all, just the choice to use Crofty and Brundle in the film made it so true, so honest to the fans. It kind of gave it the thumbprint of Formula One. They are the voice of Formula One. We tried to be as honest as possible through all of this, and and Jerry and Joe, along with everybody, trying to keep it honest. And it brought a magical sense of truth to the film. In terms of making it play in the context of the race, yeah, I mean, these engines are ripping. They are ripping. And we have Hans, who is, arguably the greatest composer of this generation, and he's paying attention. He knows what he's up against. And he's writing with that in mind. He's keeping it in mind as he's going through, trying to figure out really frequency-wise, where do I want to land? Really, where is this going to be most complementary? He's very smart. Just right out of the gate, we have that mindset going into scoring to begin with. The idea, though, with our announcers is that we wanted it to have the thumbprint, have those voices, but we didn't want it to sound like a broadcast. We wanted it to sound like either being with the driver or being with the spectators in this arena. So, of course, we have the benefit of Dolby Atmos as our premiere format. So, yeah, let's try and really take the time and make the efforts to try and create unique delays and unique slaps and a unique space to emulate what it would be like at an outdoor event of this magnitude. And the nice thing about that is that you can really differentiate between what the announcers sound like and what on-camera dialogue sounds like. And yes, there are futzes between the driver and the crew. The hard thing is when you're shifting perspective within the world of futzing, so you have to have a futz within a futz. That's where things get a little weird, and you have to get creative. We're trying to be true to what those futzes sound like in real life. What do those comms truly sound like?
I was trying to stop the futzes for the whole time.
It's all good. It's all good. No, I mean, we're trying to make a dimension of dialogue. I mean, that was one of the biggest joys for me as the dialogue music mixer was create this dimension of dialogue within the track so that you got every word. I want to believe you're going to get every word, and you're still getting this sense of space at this event, but it sounds different, just as clear, but sounds different to the drivers and to the crew. And yet you believe when the perspectives are changing and you're not pulled out. You also cut back to some of these rooms inside where there's, you're in the paddock and you're hearing it reverb within the paddock, and that the TVs have a certain sound. And when you're hearing that TV, you're actually hearing the arena outside, or you're hearing the event, the dry of the event, or in this case, it was a very reverberant version of the event outside with the futz of the TV, many layers of futz happening at once. I mean, a true fun playground-like challenge. And it was great, and then, we're making a million different choices in terms of what's important in this scene or on this shot in this moment. That's what re-recording is really all about. What the dub is all about is figuring out what do you need, what emotionally works, what is supporting the story and the narrative that's happening in any given moment in the film, whether it's a shot, whether it's a scene, whether it's the arc of a reel or the arc of the entire film. And to go back to really one of the first questions you had in terms of the races and the structure of the races, which ones have music, which ones don't have music, which ones have music that enters halfway through, when do we use the announcers, when don't we? That was something that did evolve over the course of the whole film, and we would watch the film, do a full playback, and figure out, okay, well, we've got a lot of music here. Let's figure out how we can balance this out to give the overall arc of the film exactly what it needs. It was a challenge, but it was fun. The verbiage of the announcers was changing as well. We're trying to cater to Formula One fans as much as we're trying to cater to, film fans, the film going audience that may not be Formula One knowledgeable. So we have to get certain information across, but we don't want to completely offend the F1 fans by giving them too much information. We don't want to make it ridiculous. It was a fine balance of all these things that evolved over the course of the mix. And so kudos to Gwen as well as to Gareth for sorting through all that material.
Luckily, our effects mixer, Juan Peralta, is a lifelong F1 fan. So he was, of course, always in favor of less announcer because it's like, yeah, everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. We're like, then Gary and I are like, no, nobody knows that. So we went back and forth. There was one version where it was just wall-to-wall Crofty and Brundle, and Joe even said, well, this is not the Crofty and Brundle movie. This is F1. So we had to figure out how to pare it back so you wouldn't lose the people who don't know anything, but you wouldn't offend those who know it too much. So Juan was very, very helpful with that.
Juan.
Yay, Juan!
Gareth, do you want to talk about the challenge of radio mics going around a giant race car track?
Yeah, we were assigned a few frequencies from each track we go to, so that was a constant battle getting those to work. But each car had that our drivers were in had a Cobham transmitter in, which is like a high-powered video transmitter, so we could get some audio into that. And then each driver had a digital Motorola with a push-to-talk button on their steering wheel, which would go to the mic in their helmet. But that would sound really thin and, usual sort of thin comm sound. And then we would put a sound devices pack on the driver going up to a DPA in their helmet as well. So we'd have a couple of mics in there. They would be in record only because we couldn't transmit those around the full length of the track. But the Cobham and the digital Motorola gave us what we needed whilst they were driving. But yeah, RF racetrack is a nightmare. It really was. Constant battle. They give you some frequencies and 80% of them would work, and the other 20% you might hear an Italian film crew maybe using them. So yeah, we were kept on our toes wirelessly.
And so, if I understand correctly, you were recording before the actual races.
We'd be recording for the whole weekend, so we turn up a couple of days before. We'd load into it, set up our garage, and then the race weekend consists of practice, qualifying, and then the race. So we'd be shooting whilst the races are going on, whilst they're qualifying in between those. So Toby, our first AD, would try to schedule some of our drama scenes when there was not too much racing going on, because obviously we're trying to record the cars, but when we're shooting drama I don't want any cars going around. So that was tricky for us. And when the F1 cars aren't going around, you could have a Porsche challenge race or something, so there was a kind of constant cacophony of engines, and if it wasn't engines it was pneumatic tire drills, and it was a hostile place to try and
Thumping music.
And music.
Constant thumping music.
Yeah.
That's a fun assignment. It's a hostile sound environment.
You couldn't choose anywhere worse, honestly. I mean, it's good fun to be there, unless you're trying to record sound.
So your favorite days are like the scene in the bar where it's totally under control there.
Oh God, a nice quiet dialogue scene in the bar. It's like, yes.
That's awesome. Al, do you want to talk about the idea of when you're recording pass-bys? Do whip pans? Do you follow the car? Do you keep the microphone static? How do you tackle a car pass-by?
It was a learning experience. This was my first time to record cars going this fast. They're incredibly fast. One of the early challenges I experienced was the cameras that Claudio Miranda and Joe and his team were using and all this amazing technology. They could put a camera, a mile away and zoom in on a car going 160, 180 miles an hour through these turns, and you could just follow it as it's approaching, and you're right on the hood of this car, and it's just beautiful. And then you go out there with your microphone, and it's one of the early challenges was, how do I get this car going so fast? How do I get the longest front and back of it? And some of the experiments were, okay, I'm going to line up a bunch of wide array microphones and just get this long thing. And what you got was shoo, 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 shoo. And then, okay, that didn't work. So then you pull way back and you try and get more of an ambient thing, but the camera angles are so close that it just sounds like you're a mile away, because you are. So there were a lot of challenges of figuring out how best. At one point, we used an ambisonic mic, and we just put it in the middle, and we just cranked the gain way up and put it in mono mode so that it basically was like a tracking mono mic. So were there a variety of experiments to try and get as close to these cars going so fast and to feel those gear shifts and those downshifts, because it's not just, can you get the car going, meh, because they're not doing that. They're constantly going, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear, sixth gear, seventh gear, eighth gear, eighth gear, eighth gear, eighth gear, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's also making sure that you're getting these accurate depictions of where they are on each point in the track. So ultimately, the answer is lots and lots of microphones, lots of GoPros on top of the microphone, so we could go back and say, wow, this is a great car. What was it? Oh, okay, that was, a McLaren. And then getting Andre Lynn to sit with us and match that against all of these recordings that Gareth and his team got and try to line them up so that we had turn 2 through turn 8 for this scene, and we could get a good, consistent, reliable recording. Easy. Took like 15 minutes.
Just easy. Who did the Foley for this?
We had a couple of teams. We had Shelley Roden and Heike Kosi. Those are our main team. Heike especially, he's so invested. The first thing he did when he found out he was doing it, he said, all right, well, I need carbon fiber. So he went to local auto body shops, and he got like a $8,000 piece of carbon fiber that they donated off of a race car so that he could get authentic touching and hitting on. He could have just used the car door that's in the Foley, but no, I needed carbon fiber. They got authentic shoes. They got the authentic suits. He was, they were so determined to make it Formula One accurate, and they did a beautiful job. And then, of course, we're like, we also want suspension of an F1 car going 200 miles an hour, and can you give us some gravel crash, and can you give us a fence crash? And they were all game. They did a beautiful job.
The playing cards also sounded amazing. That's a really hard thing to do because it just sounds like a tick normally, but when he was throwing the cards and stuff like that, it had a really wonderful sound to it. That was production?
That was Brad throwing the cards, yeah.
Well, that's why it sounded so great then. There you go. You put a lav on each card?
Do you know what? I think he's often aiming for a little tray or a sort of fruit bowl. I think we might have stuck a lav on one of those to get the cards hitting there. But as he flicks them, he's got quite a good sort of flicking technique. So, yeah, very good card flicking from Brad.
He's handsome, a good actor, and he can flick a card like a pro. He's got it all.
He can drive as well.
Oh, yeah, and he can drive as well. Can we talk a little bit about the dialogue when we're not at the racetrack? The dialogue is really clean, and the dialogue sounds amazing, but we've got a lot of accents going on. Was there any problem with understanding accents or doing ADR with the accents?
And one thing I love is that there were so many accents. They all got to speak in their natural tone. They didn't need somebody sort of watching their vowels or anything like that, because that is also very F1, super international. Most of the stuff, we did a tiny little bit of ADR for accent, mostly for the Casper character. When I was spotting it, I was like, okay, what are they saying? And then I was like, oh, that's an F1 term. Parc Fermé. I didn't know what Parc Fermé meant, but you could ADR that all day long. It'd still be Parc Fermé. So either you know it or you don't, kind of thing. So it's mostly for the Casper character. And also Gareth's tracks, they were gorgeous. So we didn't really, very, very little ADR. There's sort of the extra, change of line. There's a lot of Crofty and Brundle stuff. They were kind of hilarious. We would show them cuts of the races, and they would just play it. And they said, okay, we need to hit this plot point here and this plot point here. They got it. And then they would run it. They ad-libbed like 90% of it. It was fabulous to watch them. And then there was a different cut of the film and a couple different plot points. We just have a couple sessions with them, and they were fabulous. They're so gifted. They're so silver-tongued and enthusiastic about what they're doing. So it's cool.
That was going to be my next question, was were they watching it as they were recording?
Yeah, they definitely had to watch it. They said, okay, they skin the cards so you don't always put the right number on it. So they knew, okay, this is for Chopin here, and this is, whatever, Hamilton, whatever. So they knew kind of the gist of who the players were. They just let it rip.
Impressive.
Yeah.
They obviously do it a lot.
They're very good at their jobs, yes.
One more question about the cars. When you're inside the car visually, it's a kind of thing that I've never really seen before on a big screen. What was the pressure to get the sound to match that and like be as intense as when you're sitting in the car?
But those cars aren't they're fast. They're not very interesting. I would much prefer a V12 Ferrari. So these are V6 hybrid cars, and they have batteries, and they're very technical. When you listen to recordings of them, you're like, oh, they sound neat. Our Porsche at the beginning of the film, that's a beautiful sounding car, and it's just naturally beautiful. These V6 hybrids are very mechanical, and so it was a quest to, when you're standing near them, they move a lot of air. So they definitely have girth and power, but to record them, you do get that kind of more technical, and you don't get a lot of low end. So it was a quest for us to represent what it feels like to be near them, and not that we got in them, but we were near them enough to hear them steady and in the garage to know that they emit and evoke a lot of power. So how to put that on the screen, first, again, credit to Juan Peralta, who took what we gave him, and we tried to give him as much as we could and made it feel real and raw and powerful, even though it's just a V6. But it was also making sure that we got layers, and Gareth got 2 mics on a number of cars, exhaust and transmission. We got some mics on a couple of Mercedes cars, and then we took that and we just used it to the fullest degree we could. Layered it and did our sonic magic to it, and then put it on Juan's plate for him to just send us rumbling.
Yeah, I want to give Juan some more props here. I remember at the first temp that we did, it was probably the first day or the second day, where you're hearing these sounds on the stage, really, for me, the first time. For Juan, the first time. Juan and I are not editor mixers, and sometimes we are, but not on this show. But it was the first time that we were putting everything up and listening to it. And I remember, for me, listening to the cars, I was like, oh my God, we got a lot of work to do to make these cars sound big and beefy and interesting. And so at lunch, I remember I pulled Juan aside and we just had a little chat between he and I. I said, man, we got to figure that out. And he said, I was thinking you got to figure out something with those announcers too, because they're just yapping at me the whole time right down the middle. I was like, okay, well, I know what I got to do. I got to do something with these PA announcers, and you got something to do with these cars. And like right from the beginning, we knew it was like, there's work to do to make this work, but kudos to Juan being the lifelong fan, as well as being of the sport, as well as being a cinema fan and a sound fan. Like, he was on it. This is exactly this is the job that he wanted. This is a dream job for him. It ultimately, I want to believe it worked out, but I remember that day at lunch. It was, he and I looked each other in the eye like, oh my God, we got a lot to do.
I got maybe a little bit of a esoteric question for you. In the film, there's a plot point about finding your perfect moment, you're flying. Have any of you experienced, like, you're all very passionate about sound. Have you ever experienced some kind of out-of-body experience while, like, mixing or recording or anything like that?
So the thing is, when you're with your filmmakers and they just turn and they go, no notes. Yeah. And, we are investing ourselves and we want it to sound good and we are doing the best work we can. But we are trying to help these filmmakers who have been working on these films for years. We're trying to help them tell their story. And it's not, did we put a cool sound in it? It's, did we achieve the goal of making this a cinematic experience? And when the filmmakers, and ultimately when people come up and say, that was a great sounding movie, that's really rewarding.
For me, it's about team and community. I grew up on Jerry Bruckheimer films. This is the first time I've ever gotten to work on a Jerry Bruckheimer film. I grew up listening to Hans Zimmer scores. It's what made me a film fan. So the fact that I got to do, and this is not my first film collaborating with Hans, but the fact that it was Jerry and Hans, and this is the fourth film that I've mixed for Joe, and I get to work with these guys, and Juan and I go back, we're really tight. Al's a legend. Gwen is spectacular. Gareth, I just met the other day. No, but seriously, the community is what makes it feel like you're flying. When you're working with that kind of crew, if anything, it makes me a little nervous inside. Like, okay, I say to myself, you better bring your A game. You better hit your own expectation, if not go even further than your own expectation, so you don't let all these other people down. To me, that is, I think, what you're asking. That's flying.
I wanted to wrap this up before the audience questions, if there are any, by just saying congratulations. This movie, I think we can all agree, it pins your ears back in a positive way. It's loud without being frying pan to the head. This movie has the quiet moments, and even there's really intense scenes that go quiet. That really works because of what you guys did. So congratulations. We have a question here.
For Gary Rissons.
Uh-oh. I got one.
How did it feel to mix Led Zeppelin?
That was a joy. I mean, I love Led Zeppelin. I'm a guitar player. I would never play out publicly, but I play at home, and I love Jimmy Page. With that track, I was given a 2-track master for that. When I saw the rough cut, it was in the rough cut. I wasn't sure if it was going to survive. I didn't know if they were going to get the rights to it. I know that all the Led Zeppelin cues are hard to get. That whole catalog, it's pretty hard to get the approvals to do it, and I know it's expensive as well. I had a little time off, and I started experimenting with, all the stem splitters that are out there. I tried 7 or 8 of them to figure out if I'm going to put this into a film, and it's going to be the opening number of a film, it's got to be the coolest, best way you've ever experienced Led Zeppelin off of the record. It can't just be put it up in stereo and cross your fingers. It's one of those dual mono recordings where the drums are really heavy on one channel versus the guitar is heavy on the other. So, I experimented with a couple of different stem splitting algorithms, and I don't want to get, too in the weeds on it, but I picked my favorite one that's when you isolated the elements, sounded the purest. Sometimes they do weird things when you separate them, and they're not always great. I found one that was particularly good. I spent some time making an Atmos mix of that track, standalone, because I knew the sequence was going to change editorially. There would be some picture trims, and it was going to move. So I wanted to do the whole song, and I wanted to keep it in an automated form so I could give it to our music editor so that they could do the conforms and do whatever we needed to do to it. And I just wanted it to be larger than life. And I kind of went, if there was one creative philosophy that went with it, it was as much as I love Jimmy Page, go for the drums. Go for the percussion, because that's what's going to work best with the cars. That's what's going to work best with the announcers, especially in that breakdown that it does. It was fun, super fun. And I brought it to the first temp. Our first temp, a little bit of trivia, our first temp was in Atmos. It was kind of a proof of concept that, how were we actually going to find the signature for the sound mix? Let's figure it out early, do it on temp 1. And so I brought that Atmos mix of that track, and I want to believe it helped solidify the cue in its existence in the film. I don't think anybody ever said, I'm not sure that cue's working. It was fun. It was big. It was fat. It was fun.
It really worked, especially that one moment where you hear Plant yell and it cuts to the faraway shot, the fireworks in the background. Everybody
drum fill
gasps.
at that spot's pretty cool.
It's perfect. Yeah. One more question?
I'm wondering what was the most difficult challenge I faced.
This hasn't been done before. Let's just talk about the film. let's make a movie during a live sporting event, and let's integrate a fictional team in with real race teams. And then let's invent new cameras that are going to go on these cars going 140, 160, 180 miles an hour. And then let's put our actors out in the middle of all of that chaos and give them one take, sometimes two. And then we get delivered perfect production. Even just the songs. Jerry and Joe were constantly reviewing songs. Let's make sure that every single song pops. Let's make sure the cars all live in this cinematic world. And let's make sure our 7-time world champion doesn't scream at us.
No pressure.
Hardest scene for me was the damn pinball machine. Oh my God. That was so hard because you can't change performance. You got to keep the performance. They didn't want to ADR it, but getting the overlaps. And Brad, according to Mr. Gareth, he couldn't do the lines without playing the actual pinball. So it was like the ding, ding, dings. Oh my God, it was a nightmare.
Dialogue scene on the balcony in Vegas. That was pretty hard. I mean, I try to do as little noise reduction as I have to. I try only to do it when we have to. Generally speaking, minimal in the show, but that scene was a challenge. And so kudos to Brad Sebenoff as well as Gwen in making that scene work. But I think I'll go to something that Al mentioned, with all the songs that we have, it's kind of a signature of Jerry Bruckheimer films. I had never worked for Jerry before, but I love Jerry's movies, grew up on them. Like, I don't want to let that guy down. That might have been the hardest part for me, is like, what's Jerry going to say? I don't know what he's going to say, but I don't want to let the guy down. Is this going to work? I hope it works. All right, let's see if it works.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges for us was obviously trying to shoot at the tracks and capture everything, but at the same time we were also a fully functioning team, so everything had to work, everything had to be practical. We had to have constant communications with our stunt drivers and our actors going around in the cars, and communication to the crew on the pit wall. So as well as recording it all had to work so we could all communicate and hear what we were doing and make sure no one crashed. And so it was just actually being a fully functioning team as well as filming it.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you very much, everybody that came out, and thank you, Glen Film Center. Hopefully we can do this again one day soon. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Keep going to the movies.
Wow, what an amazing night. I would love to do more of these, and I'll be working to make that happen. Big thanks to Gwen, Gary, Gareth, and Al for joining me and sharing their knowledge and stories. As the new year begins, Sound Ideas is offering its largest sale to date. For a limited time, receive 55% off professionally recorded sound effects and music libraries. This New Year promotion applies across their esteemed catalog, making it an ideal moment to expand or update your professional collection with authentic audio and a proven standard of quality. The Sound Ideas New Year's sale is available now for a limited time, so go visit sound-ideas.com right away. Tonebenders is produced by me, Timothy Muirhead. Theme music is by Jim Guthrie. You can reach me via email through info@tonebenderspodcast.com. Follow Tonebenders on Instagram to stay on top of new episodes. If you like the show, you can help us out by spreading the word to your friends and colleagues, or leave us a tip. Just go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click support.